Hey, this is Madeline Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio.
Hello, everybody. I'm Madeline Sklar. Welcome to Social Audio News, also known as All Things Audio. We've got several co-hosts that are going to be joining me today while Suze Cooper is out. Hello, Michael. Thank you for being one of my fabulous co-hosts.
Hello. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to have you here with us. And we are waiting for our additional co-hosts. You know, it takes a whole village to do this when Suze is out, but that's okay. We make it work anyway. And we even have a very special guest today. I'm so excited. Robert Hanna. Robert, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you ever so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I really feel welcomed into your community. So really excited to talk a little bit more about LinkedIn audio.
Oh, I cannot wait, because we've been wanting to have a really broad discussion about it, and we don't know too many people that have access to it. So Suze has been listening to some of these rooms, but you know, we found out about you, and we're like, okay, we got to bring you on as a guest speaker so you can come in and, you know, give us the scoop and talk about, plus you're doing really cool things with the town hall. So super excited to learn more from you on that today. So everybody here is in for a treat. Love when we have a special guest. And I see our other co-hosts are here. There's Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Fantastic. Excited to hear all about this LinkedIn audio.
Yes, I'm super excited. And I see Morgan's here too. Hey, Morgan. All of our co-hosts are with us. But yeah, I'm so excited to talk about so many things. We have a ton of stuff. This is going to be a jam-packed hour of lots of information. We're going to dive right in. We got lots of news to report with Twitter Spaces. We also got Clubhouse. We got, of course, LinkedIn Live Audio with Robert Hanna. So first up, last week, a week ago, we talked about how for super follows, they're now having spaces for that, which we were all very super excited about. And after we had hosted this room, Twitter Spaces went on to have a nice little Q&A session, a little community gathering, and talk about it. And so we want to briefly discuss that here with you guys. I think, Jennifer, I think some of my co-hosts here have a few things that I know, Jennifer, you wanted to kind of summarize it for us a bit.
Yeah, so we had Danny Singh, Eric Berlin, JTW at JTW Design, at Leah plus ran away, and they talked. They were Super Followers community manager, Super Followers design lead, the engineering manager on Super Follows, and they talked about kind of some of the vision behind it and what they've seen happen now that it's kind of out in a beta test as far as Super Followers and now Super Follower Spaces. I think the things that really resonated with me was that Super Follower Spaces cannot be recorded yet. And they're not discoverable. So you know how right now you can do a search on Spaces. The super followers are not able to be discovered. So the only discovery is if you're a super follower of that host, or if that host tweets it out and lets folks know that they can join a space if they're a super follower. That is coming. The discovery is coming. And then the other thing I thought was interesting was that they talked about the aha moment. I don't know if everybody understood the super follower concepting. I got it. You know, you're a super follower. Somebody pays you, let's say $4.99 a month in order to get exclusive content. And so I was like, okay, cool. Now I don't qualify for that. I have under 10,000 followers. So the minimum in order to apply to become part of that program is 10,000 followers. So I'm underneath that. But I hadn't actually thought about this aspect of it. And Eric said, I saw people tweeting to their super followers and sending out links like for exclusive Zoom sessions and things like that. And all of a sudden I had that whole V8 moment or the dope moment where I was like, oh, this is like Twitter's version of Patreon, where it's not limited to just stuff you can do on Twitter. You could actually use it as a kicking off point for other things that you can do. And I guess for me, I was oblivious and blind to that. Maybe everyone else in the room understood that. But all of a sudden now Super Followers definitely has more appeal to me as a concept than it did before. I don't know what everyone else thinks about it.
Yeah, I feel it's a lot like Patreon. If you understand what Patreon is, I feel like that's very much what this is like. But with Patreon, you can do a lot. And this with Twitter is going to be much more limited. But yeah, you know, it was definitely an interesting space they hosted talking about these new spaces, because they're going in the direction of finally giving us some private spaces. And this looks like the start of it. I'm hoping next up it'll be for communities, because I do have a Twitter Smarter community. I would love to do some private spaces just in there. Does my co-hosts have any thoughts on this real quick before we move on?
Yeah, so there were a couple of interesting details that popped out in the Q&A section, one of which was something on their roadmap, which I hadn't heard mentioned before, which is a way to give super followers free or cheaper entry to regular ticketed spaces you run. So you get a discount because you're a friend of the host, basically. So that was interesting. The other one was a really nice question, I think, from Adam, which was how to bring in a special guest that isn't a super follower. At the moment, if you want to have a special guest for your super followers, that guest has to be super following you. So it might be slightly embarrassing to ask your special guest to pay you £10 a month in order to be a guest. So they're thinking about that too. And the last one was custom React emojis. So you can imagine, much like Discord, a special set of emojis for your super followers that they might be able to use elsewhere on Twitter.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm excited that they're going in this direction. Glad that Spaces is talking to the community, giving us more information, having some Q&A so people could ask questions. So I like the direction this is going. Hopefully communities will be next up for private spaces. Also, something interesting we came across that, is definitely worth sharing is, especially if you're not familiar with these Twitter communities, they're pretty cool. They started a Twitter Spaces one. So it's Twitter Spaces Feedback. And it was launched just recently. And they're doing this as a place where you can share your thoughts, ideas, and feedback on Spaces. So if you're hosting Spaces, you should definitely join this community because they're listening to your feedback. And if you participate in these rooms and you just want to share feedback just as a listener, you should join it too. So I'm really thrilled. Did any of you guys join it? Because I certainly did.
Yeah, I did as well.
Yeah, I think it was super smart of them to do. Next up, there's a tool that I'm experimenting with, a third-party tool for Spaces. Y'all have heard Susan and I talk about FlowGen, which we're really having a fun time with. There's this new one called Audio Labs. And I have to tell you, I am getting DM'd constantly by people with these third-party tools. Everybody is coming up with one to help you in some capacity with Spaces, and usually Clubhouse as well. This one is specifically Clubhouse and Spaces. And they really got my interest because, and I have this article, well, I have this link to their website here. I'm going to also share some other information in just a moment in the Nest, and also it'll be in the show notes. But they've come up with a way to automatically take your hosted room in Spaces and put it into your YouTube. And that sounded super interesting to me. And I even tested it this week with them. And I'm going to put this tweet in here that shows you an example of one. They actually put it in there for me yesterday. I do have to give them permission, their email permission to my YouTube account. But I spent time chatting with them on Zoom, got to know them. I feel comfortable giving this a try. So because of that, this whole process can be automated. And I'm pretty excited about that. And I also noticed they're in Product Hunt right now. If you like Product Hunt to find tools and stuff, I noticed that Matt Navarra put out a tweet today. I somehow missed that they were in Product Hunt. So of course I went right over there and gave them an upvote. Have any of you guys tried this Audio Labs or familiar with it? I mean, I know they're new. I think it's just a beta right now. What do you think of having that ability for your room to go? I know there's other tools doing this. I know people are manually doing it. But what do you think of having your content from Spaces and or Clubhouse over on YouTube?
I love this idea a lot. I've done it with Ecamm, using the desktop version of Twitter Spaces and then just doing a screen share and then sending it to Facebook or YouTube or anywhere else. But this seems more integrated and an easier lift for a host, because when you're a host, you're doing a lot of things. And if there's one less thing for you to think about, well, I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice when the heavy lifting is done for you. That's always a nice thing. Morgan, what do you think of being able to have a room get over to YouTube? Do you like that thought of being able to repurpose it that way?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting experiment. And I've seen a few people, in fact, there's somebody in the audience today, Anne, who's been doing something quite similar with Clubhouse. It's quite a nice kind of collective experience where you can be in a space or a room together, but also be streaming something that you can maybe both watch while you're in the room. I'm not sure whether mixing the mediums like that is going to, for example, build you a big audience on YouTube, but I think it's a kind of overlap that's interesting to be explored. The other use, I saw somebody do this by using the live streaming on Twitter to stream a screen share that they were doing in a Clubhouse room. So the video was on Twitter, but the people were in a room on Clubhouse. And the nice thing about this was that when you ended the stream, those people could then join you in the room or the space to keep talking about it together. So that there's that use. What you do with the audience after the stream has ended is interesting.
Right. Well, I'm all about repurposing content. I mean, I've been doing digital marketing as a content creator all the way back to 1996. And when social media really was getting going and I got really into it in 2005, I mean, I just was realizing like so much of this content, if what you're teaching and sharing is evergreen, I mean, this stuff can be repurposed in so many different ways. And so much of what I teach and share these days is very easy to take that and repurpose it. And so I love the idea of getting this onto my YouTube. When I had my meeting with Audio Labs, I had to admit, like, well, my YouTube channel is, I haven't been doing a lot with it lately. I did, years back, but I actually was thinking about wanting to do some newer videos, some how-to Twitter tip videos. And this could really, this could all complement each other. I think people that would come over there for these little how-to tips would love to be like, oh, she's hosting rooms and spaces talking about Twitter stuff. Let me go watch these. That maybe they didn't know I was hosting spaces. And the other way around, they come over to check out the YouTube of a space I had and they're like, oh, look at these other videos she has. So I think there is great opportunity to if you're looking to do a YouTube, some marketing through YouTube, I think these go hand in hand. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, there's reason to believe that YouTube is a growing platform for podcasters and for content that is audio first, but people kind of live on YouTube all day long, searching through things, learning things there. And so I guess if you can find a way to repurpose your content to be on that platform and gain an audience, then that's a great tool to have.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for y'all's thoughts on this. Next up, Twitter media is rebranding themselves to Twitter Create, and they're like putting all of this stuff together for creators. Before it was not always easy to find all this great information from Twitter that helps podcasters, Twitter Spaces hosts. But this is super interesting. Who would like to touch on this a little bit? Because it is some interesting stuff they're doing.
I think I miss the creator aspect of it. One of the things I really liked was the ads feature that kind of went along with that. It seemed to me you couldn't do one without the other. And I miss the fact that we can no longer create a video or a card that has a link inside of Twitter in order to promote the space so that it was clickable and would go to the space. Now it has to be an external link. So the media aspect of it is getting less use for me because I'm not able to link to anything inside of Twitter.
Well, this is more of like just a place for creator content to help them like on how to use these different things on Twitter. Like a hub for, yeah.
I thought it was interesting if you read the list at the very end of the kind of creators. So they mention film and TV, news, gaming, writing, and podcasting, right? So the audio mentioned there is podcasting, and we haven't really seen what Twitter is doing with their podcasting efforts yet.
Right.
But the other part of this is I wonder, this is more like a brand communication effort, I suppose, with some frequently asked question type advice. But it's probably, you can't imagine that a great number of creators will be checking out the Twitter website for this. But it's more about telling a story, I think.
Yeah. Well, this tweet from Twitter Create, when I first saw this, I didn't quite get it. That's why I put this tweet from Matt Navarra right behind it in the nest, because I think Matt really explains this better, saying Twitter launches a new Twitter Create Hub to highlight monetization opportunities for creators. And when you go to this new hub, I mean, they had a lot of this information on Twitter already in this little Twitter media section, but I always felt like it was a little misleading. I thought it was not easy to find if you were a creator and you wanted to, get some ideas of how to better use these different things, spaces and just like we were saying, Morgan, if you're targeting film and TV or news or gaming, like they have lots of content geared for different types of creators. So I guess they realize they need to make more of a hub for all this different content, and it's really geared for those that are trying to monetize their digital creations through Twitter. So I kudos to Twitter. Look, we know that with this impending sale with Elon Musk, that initially Twitter was like, we're not going to do anything new right now. Everything's just kind of on hold, and we just weren't expecting to have much news to report for a while. But now it seems like Twitter is just still doing lots of things. They're putting out new information, some new features. Things are still happening. So I think it's great that they're coming up with a way to gather this information. I think they're just making it easier to find and consume. Next up, Spaces feedback community. Who would like to talk about that?
I'll probably have a go at talking about a slightly controversial tweet yesterday, which I should explain myself. But so I think this is really nice to see, and this is the communities team basically working with the Spaces team. I imagine they work fairly closely in any case. So this is a Twitter community where you can join and you can give feedback about Twitter Spaces and comment on other people's, and the team will be reading and replying to those. So it's very early days. It's been out for about 6 days now, and it will be growing. So I think it's stage one of this, but it's nice to see the Spaces team working with the communities team on this.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you uncovered this. And, that's what we're here for, is to share anything that's going on with, that has to do with social audio, which, would be Twitter Spaces. So I think that's great news. I know Simon, he's part of the community team, right? He does Twitter communities. I've seen him moderate different communities. So yeah, interesting tweet. Thanks for kind of keeping us in the loop on that. Next up, and just FYI, we have a special guest that we're going to talk to in a few minutes that you guys do not want to miss. But one more quick thing I want to share before we do that is what we have some really interesting regulars that either listen to the show live here, they come here live, they chat with us, they listen, or they're really big about just catching the replay because it can't be here live. And one of them is Joe Dale, and he hosted this. It was an online interview on YouTube. And he just did this incredible shout out to Susan and I, talking about how we created the All Things Audio podcast from this weekly room in Spaces. And so I just, wanted to share this because I thought that was super cool that he learned a lot from how we're doing. I mean, he even talked about, our process, how we use Notion to collect all the news for the week that we share with each other, how we prep ahead of time. You all know that I make a Twitter Moments with everything in the Nest to keep things simple and easy, so you don't have to sit here and try to save or like or bookmark all these different tweets in the Nest. A little bit later, I'm going to put the link to that in the Nest that has very meta, the Nest, about the Nest, that has like all the tweets. But it's really nice when people are learning from how we're doing things and sharing it with other people. And his guest was just fascinated when he was talking about it. So just wanted to do a little quick shout out in the Nest there. There's a little video clip of it. I watched the full video, but he actually has some clips so you can just see the part where he's talking us up. I am so excited we have a special guest with us. We have Robert Hanna, who is doing LinkedIn audio. And we're also fascinated with that and want to learn more about it. And he's been hosting these town halls every other week. And, we're just curious to know more about this. So, Robert, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much. Once again, I've really enjoyed listening in and learning more about Twitter, as this is a platform that I'm keen to start using a lot more. I must confess it's not been of recent times, but I fully appreciate and see the potential of this platform. So LinkedIn has always been my home, but I've just really enjoyed it. So thanks for welcoming me into your community.
Oh, you are so welcome. And it's interesting because we've talked about this before, that you have someone like me that I teach Twitter. I'm all about Twitter marketing, teaching tips, and people call me a Twitter marketing expert. So it makes sense for me to host my rooms in Twitter Spaces. I host 3 different rooms each week, and it just feels right for me. But we also know there are people that like to live over in LinkedIn, and it would make sense to be hosting your rooms over there. So we were definitely excited when we kept hearing that this LinkedIn audio was coming. And then we know it's in beta now with some, we've heard about some different people hosting, but, we've been hearing about you hosting these town halls, and we're surprised that LinkedIn is not doing that. But I'd like to know more about like your background, how you got started, and what made you decide to start doing these town halls.
Sure, yeah. So good evening, everybody from the UK. So I'm based just outside of London. Day to day, I own a legal talent solutions and content creation firm. So we're focused all around community. It's called KC Partners. I'm also a podcaster myself. So we're sponsored. We run the Legally Speaking podcast, and we're sponsored by an organization called Clio, who are quite prominent on Twitter. They're a large legal tech provider, and we've managed to scale that to the top 1.5% globally across 3,500 cities. And I'm a really big community builder, not only in Web 2, but also in the world of Web 3. I'm really passionate about trying to educate people as much as possible when it comes to all things Web3. With regards to LinkedIn and my journey with the platform, historically, I've always come from a recruiting and talent perspective. So naturally, I started LinkedIn on where LinkedIn really first started, where it just used to be a very basic resume style platform. And it's changed a lot significantly over the years, as many of you will know, and they're rolling out feature after feature to compete with the likes of Twitter and various other platforms that are out there. And so, my journey has progressed. I'm now in the sort of top 1% as part of my social selling index score on the platform. I've been voted as a LinkedIn Rising Star and really immersed myself into the platform more and more, and how the whole LinkedIn audio journey came about. And this is a tip for anybody who's interested in LinkedIn. LinkedIn have really been hiring a lot of what they call LinkedIn creator managers. And their job is to really identify creators and help them grow their personal brands, help them grow their communities, and give them early access to the latest resources that are out there. So I have a very great relationship with my creator manager based in the UK. And because I consistently post and stick within my lane and have a niche, which is legal, he very kindly gave me access to the LinkedIn audio, through which I became a beta tester, which the initial run, I think there was only a couple of hundred of us. And why am I so interested in LinkedIn? Just to give some context for people who may be less familiar with the platform, LinkedIn has over 800 million members. Admittedly, not all of that 800 million are active, but it has a reach across 200 countries. There's over 57 million companies registered on there. I personally have found it the best platform to find key decision makers, the platform that could reach nearly 70 million key decision makers. And according to, I believe, Q4 of 2021, it had nearly 4.6 billion visits. So the power of LinkedIn as a platform for me, as somebody who's sort of in entrepreneurship, business, B2B, all of that good stuff, I really, really see the huge potential. And I love the fact now that they're really turning their attention to content creation, supporting creators, and humanizing the workforce a lot more to encourage people to build out their own professional brands, but also to bring a more kinder, more collaborative community. So how it all happens, I built the relationship with the creator manager, part of the first initial 200, and I was just surprised because when LinkedIn rolled it out, there was no meaning. So I'm pretty well versed in social audio. I have quite a large following on Clubhouse, and I saw that Clubhouse would run their town halls that many of you would know. It's less of a thing over here in the UK. It's more of an American thing, definitely, town halls. It's not so much what we do over here. But I saw how powerful they were. We're giving the community a voice, listening to people, taking feedback, and going away and then implementing that. So I really just came up with the idea, pitched it to the beta testers. We're in a private group on LinkedIn. There's about a few hundred, as I mentioned, saying, hey, I think we should do this. And LinkedIn said, sure, run with it. And that's sort of how it happened, really. So it's a very community-led approach. I've been consistently running them now since January of this year, once LinkedIn Audio was released. We started every Sunday, but because there's only so many features, so many things that you can look to sort of break as part of a beta test, we want to break it as much as we can, because obviously try to make it the best thing possible. We're now making it every other Sunday, so we run it bi-weekly. So the next one will be the following Sunday, and yeah, it's really an initiative which is about an hour long. I share the latest updates from all of us beta testers with the community. I let people know what LinkedIn is working on, what the roadmap is. We also allow people to come up and give a shout out to their events and their rooms, because discoverability, and that's maybe something we'll talk about a little bit more when we go into the actual features and likes and dislikes of the platform, is still not quite there. And people are welcome to share their feedback. And then every Sunday, I consolidate all the feedback and share that with the product team at LinkedIn. And they put that into their roadmap, and they sort of give us some visibility, perhaps not as much as we'd like, on when those are going to be implemented. But just one thing I would also say, I was very kindly invited to LinkedIn's head office in Dublin the other weekend to meet with the product team, and I said to them, what is the roadmap for LinkedIn and LinkedIn Audio? And they said this is one of their most pressing and most important features that they want to get right, because there's still a little bit of frustration amongst the LinkedIn community that it still is only in beta form. But as a lot of you will know, and particularly if you're used to Twitter, it's not like a Clubhouse. It's not a 1 to 2 year old business. They're building on lots of old technologies. They're trying to move a large machine. So trying to onboard potentially 800 million users to LinkedIn Audio with all of the features and all of the requests, and get it 100% right with all the safety considerations, legal considerations, and everything else that go with it, and making sure that it has an edge or is competitive to other products out there, is not an overnight job. But I'm super excited, and I'll stop waffling now, and happy to give you some more sort of insights specifically on LinkedIn Audio, if that's helpful.
Well, you are a great speaker. You just shared tons of stuff to kind of enlighten us on what you're doing over there and how it got started. I love it. And I would definitely like to know, what do you like about LinkedIn Audio? What do you dislike? And any of my co-hosts, if you guys have questions too, let's bombard them with it, because we want to know more about LinkedIn Audio. So just start with your likes and dislikes.
Sure. So I think I'll try and make it so maybe what some of the differences may be here to Twitter. So one thing I really liked, and I'm a podcaster, and as you know, Madeline, unfortunately I'm on the move at the moment. Otherwise, I'd be tuning in through my desktop to do a LinkedIn Live audio, because that's one of the great features. You can switch between desktop and mobile very, very easily, and it plugs into my Rodecaster mic, and so the sound quality is excellent. So I really like the fact that there's a desktop version on top of the mobile version. I also like the sound quality. I think the overall audio quality is great. Another feature that I particularly like is there's a pre-live room, almost like a green room. So let's say you are trying to organize speakers. Sometimes it can be a bit of a mad rush, particularly if you folks are used to running Clubhouse rooms. I'm not sure if the feature exists on Twitter, so forgive me, but it's always good to have that 15 minutes before to sort of have a behind the scenes chat. You can do that in a pre-live room. You can test your mics. You can make sure everyone's sounding okay. You can suggest the agenda or set the agenda. So having a pre-live, admittedly at the moment it's only 15 minutes. We'd actually like that to be a little bit longer, just because sometimes people would like to do a little bit more pre-planning. Just like here on Twitter Spaces, people really enjoy the emojis. I think it's really important that you're able to engage the audience. And so the emoji reactions is a great way if you're trying to poll a conversation or keep the conversation engaged. The utilization of emojis has been really well received. It's also a great feature in terms of being able to exponentially increase your reach. So what do I mean by that? What you can now do on LinkedIn with LinkedIn Audio events, once you've scheduled an event, under your profile on LinkedIn, there's now the option for those who have creator mode on to have a URL link. So if everyone is welcome to follow me, by the way, on LinkedIn if you'd like to do so. It's just Robert Hanna, so you can look at my profile to get a sense of what I'm talking about. But on your profile, there is an opportunity for you to put, basically, it could be a lead magnet, it could be a consultation, it could be anything, but it also could be your latest LinkedIn live audio event, which is super cool because that's a great opportunity for you to then market for people who are directly visiting your profile, your upcoming event, on top of putting that in your featured section on your profile. So I think there are a couple of powerful things that LinkedIn have incorporated that also make it easier for people to boost their numbers. I also like the fact that it easily links to your calendars and can be sort of included into your calendar. And I just like the whole fact that LinkedIn's trying to humanize the workplace a little bit more. Let's switch to some of the dislikes, though, because nothing's perfect, as we know, Madeline. So, also, did you want to jump in there, or?
No, you're good. This is great. Yeah, go ahead and give us the dislikes.
Yeah, so there's there's quite a few urgent things, and this is where there's a slight frustration. Firstly, there was, like with all new things, shiny new toys, there was mass excitement. LinkedIn's moving to LinkedIn audio. It's going to be amazing. It's going to have absolutely everything, and it's going to crush everything out of the water. And hopefully it will do at some stage, but at the moment it needs to really focus and double down on these key features that are missing. Number one, there is an unable to have any co-host. So like you're hosting today, Madeline, you have co-hosts. It's so good, particularly when you have large rooms, because you may be wanting to speak in the back channels or coordinate or just be able to share the load, or have someone who just invites speakers up to the stage, or someone who can, help moderate the discussion. So currently it's only one host that's in charge of opening up the event, closing the event, inviting people up to stage, moderating the discussion, checking the back channels to do all of the DMs that might come in and everything else. So at the moment, that needs changing. So we've requested that there's the option to have multiple hosts or co-hosts. The other missing feature that's super important is, and lacking, which we're obviously doing right here, right now, is recording. So there's no recording feature on LinkedIn audio right now, which again, for podcasters, and Madam, I love that you talked about, contest repurposing, and you just absolutely love it. Of course, people would want to make sure that they can repurpose snippets, bite-sized audiograms, you name it, redistribute it. That currently doesn't exist. For me, one of the other biggest bugbears that's actually affecting my performance on LinkedIn now in terms of my content creation is the way that you schedule an event. So currently, because LinkedIn is calling these LinkedIn Live audio events, you have to set up an event, which is fine. But in order to set up an event, that means that you have to actually do a LinkedIn post. And the problem with that, LinkedIn does not like people who do multiple posts in one day. It affects the algorithm. And also, event posts give you very little reach. So for me, because I have a podcast and I have other assets that I want to distribute in terms of content, I look at the WAV strategy, written audio, video, I have planned content. And unfortunately, because I have to schedule these events and post them, that's killing my other content as a creator on the platform. So we've requested that you can set up an event but not have to post to affect your other pre-planned content. It's a real bugbear. The other thing is you can't set up reoccurring events. So let's say this is a weekly room and you want to hold it every week. LinkedIn, we've requested, is just a simple weekly recurring event that happens same time, so people know when it is, what time zone it is, when it's happening. So that's another thing that's missing. I mentioned that the desktop version is good. The desktop version is good, but it's not great. What I mean by that, it's a very tiny screen. So the screen of the desktop, you would imagine, you would have thought that you would have been able to expand it across the whole of your page so you could see who is basically in the room. It's like now on your phone, you can only see a certain number of people. You have to scroll up and down. One of the benefits I would have assumed of having a desktop version would have been able to see more people in the room. So you can, as a host, as you would do, Madeline, if you see key people of influence or people you're keen to network with, you would shine a light on them. You would welcome them to the room. You'd say some complimentary things about them as they'd enter. All of those little 1% touches that really make a difference when you're trying to sort of moderate a discussion and make people feel warm and cozy in your room. The next thing, which is really lacking, is discoverability. So this is where, if anyone, just out of interest, was anyone familiar with LinkedIn stories? If you're a LinkedIn person, does anyone remember LinkedIn stories? Just give me a sort of any form of reaction if you did. Okay, interesting. So LinkedIn stories came and went, But what LinkedIn should do and is thinking about, please don't quote me on this though, folks, it hasn't been confirmed, but following my trip to Dublin when I was at their head office, it might have been suggested, is much like you have with Twitter Spaces, it's friction free right now with Twitter. So you can go onto your Twitter, you can go to your homepage, and you can see which spaces are happening at the top. Admittedly, they may not be ones you're 100% interested in. You have to do more legwork to go to the other section, but currently that doesn't exist at all. So what I've suggested to LinkedIn is where they had the bubbles before for stories, they should be replaced with LinkedIn live audio rooms, similar to that of Twitter Spaces, because people like to browse, they like to see a hallway, they like to feel like, they have the choice to enter a discussion that might appeal to them. And I think if that is happening, I think LinkedIn live audio will be off to the races, because at the moment it's very hard to find the events. They have now within the My Network tab, for people who are familiar with LinkedIn, they do now have audio events, which are in a chronological order, because previously the LinkedIn live audio events were not in a chronological order, and it was a complete mess. And you had to go to the search bar, type in LinkedIn live audio event, and just hope that some sort of events would come up. So they've neatened that up a little bit, but still discoverability is way off. They also need to push out more notifications. So when people go live, much like a Clubhouse, or if you've got the bell on for somebody, you'll get notified. So they're working on notifications, but of course there's sensitivities with that as well, because they have to protect the creators and they need to protect certain people, because certain people may, let's just give a basic example. Let's say you're an employee of a company and you go into an event and it's within work hours, but it's something you're interested in. Is your employer going to be happy with that? And do you want to be visible to them? Not sure. So we've requested to LinkedIn as well, there might be an opportunity for a discrete mode or some mode that if people would like to listen, but also not be potentially visible. So that can protect them from any potential flashback to their employers, which I think is quite important. The other thing as well that LinkedIn needs to do, there's no pin links. And I think that's a real key miss for LinkedIn, because of the networking opportunities, much like Clubhouse, much like here, you can pin a tweet, you can pin a link. That doesn't exist currently. And there's no in-room communication channels. So there's no chat feature, much like LinkedIn has recently released as well. And the way to invite people to your event is very clunky. So you would have thought there would be a detailed filter system where you can filter through, because the whole benefit of having an 800 million strong database in effect is to filter that so you can really target and hit the niche people you want to invite. It's not as advanced as you would like in terms of people you would filter through. And also you have to manually do that. So you get up to 1,000 invites a week as a beta tester to invite people to your events. But who has the time to manually go through, filter, and add 1,000 people to an event? That needs to be automated, or you need to be able to save lists if you do it one time round and re-invite those people. Again, that currently doesn't exist right now. I'm going to pause there because I don't want to go on. I don't know if this is helpful.
It's great stuff. I'm loving it. I mean, LinkedIn should put you in charge of this LinkedIn audio. You just know it all, and you've got great ideas of things they need to do. I'm blown away. I'm curious if Jennifer, Michael, or Morgan have any questions or thoughts to add.
I'm curious how you're recording your stuff now, because discoverability and repurposing right now, from what I can see, just as an outsider who wants to attend some of these, I typically will hear about a LinkedIn live audio space after it's happened. And I'm scrambling to go get there. And then, of course, it's nothing except the past event. And it feels kind of like wah, wah, wah. So how are you kind of capturing some of that and using the quality of those audio spaces to repurpose? I mean, how can I, if you had that space on Sunday, how can I go listen to it even though it's Wednesday?
And there lies the problem. You can't currently. So we don't actually record the town halls in themselves, but I do make sure that I take detailed notes and I share them with the community. So it does encompass all of the main points. There isn't a predefined best way to record other outside, where you can have, where I've done other events for content for my legal and the recruiting community, where I will be co-hosting, and I'd have one of my other colleagues who will be in the audience, and they'll be on mute and they'll be recording from their end. And of course, we'd notify the audience in advance and make sure that people are aware, and if people wanted to come up onto the stage, that the room's recorded. So just to make sure that everything is in good order. But at the moment, it's one of the glaringly missing things that LinkedIn, and it's probably the number one thing that the community has requested that they get sorted, particularly before it gets rolled out of beta and discoverability is sought, because it's all well and good sorting out the discoverability. But then if you get the volume of traffic and you're not able to record that quality content where you're probably going to get higher quality speakers or better quality audiences, you're going to want to have those people recorded so you can repurpose, you can shout them out, you can do all of that good stuff as well. So I hope that answered your question to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Robert? This has been very helpful, Robert. Thank you so much. I'm just like mind blown. Sounds like they got some really great features that I would love to see implemented over in Spaces here. But then it seems like it's lacking of some that we're so used to here, like the discoverability and the replays. I find it very interesting.
So, Robert, I wanted to ask a question from the point of view of somebody who doesn't go on LinkedIn very often, but is quite familiar with the Clubhouse culture and Twitter Spaces culture. What do you find is the difference in LinkedIn in terms of culture? And the other way of putting that is, what for you are the constraints you feel when you're hosting a space, and what kinds of formats do you think work better on LinkedIn? What is a successful LinkedIn event?
Great questions, Morgan. And I would just like to highlight my very dear friend Sweater, who's in the audience. Sweater Regime. She has over 250,000 followers on LinkedIn, a top voice, one of the best careers coaches, and also somebody who has been very actively stress testing and also one of the beta testers on LinkedIn. So Sweater, thank you so much for joining us. We're talking about our favorite topic, all things LinkedIn. Morgan, what I would say, and this is with respect, LinkedIn, there's no place to hide. So what I mean by that, there is a verification of where you're currently working. There is a way to really understand, is the person who's speaking really the person they are? And other social audio platforms, I will not name them, but may have been mentioned in the room, you can put whatever you like into the bio and sell whatever you want and say you've done whatever you have, but there may be nothing there to verify that. And then that falls into the rabbit hole of scamming or bad experiences or whatever the case may be. I have found LinkedIn, this feature, to be a far more professional, but human and fun platform. And that's something I've stressed to LinkedIn as someone who's been around the green rooms, the Clubhouse, the Wisdom, the Firesides, and stress tested a lot of different social audio platforms over the last 18 months. I am making it my mission to ensure it has the right culture, which I believe is one of professionalism, but also knowledge sharing, but in a human facet, and we don't get into the sort of clickbaits and just getting people into an event for the sake of getting followers, and we actually put some real good quality content out there. So from my experience thus far, we haven't had issues with sort of bots or trolls or things like that, and I'm really on a mission to ensure we maintain that. But as I say, but we also do humanize, because we do need to make sure that, you know, we take a bit of pressure and stress off our shoulders, and having a bit of fun isn't a bad thing, but also making sure people are actually talking about what they know about and they actually have some substance behind it, and people aren't getting scammed or losing money or having bad experiences or being effective. That's very important.
That's great. George, did you have a quick question? I figured you had something you wanted to ask.
Do you know if they have consulted with any group dynamics psychologists or professional group facilitators?
The honest answer is, George, I do not know. I would have thought they should have and will be, but the honest answer is I do not know.
I would urge you to urge them to do that. I studied group dynamics psychology. This is not a personal pitch. I'm not accepting consulting assignments, but there is a whole bunch of people out there. These should not be designed by engineers. They should be designed by people who are highly experienced in doing audio facilitation. They build in different features, and that's my plea. Consult these people. They're out there. There are legions of them, and they're really good. They really know what they're doing.
I think that's a fantastic point, and I absolutely agree with you. And some of the other beta testers have actually mentioned something along the previous lines to what you're talking about, the need for that, because sometimes it does just feel that we're talking to the engineers and they're not quite getting that human side and all those other things that you mentioned, and what are the features that somebody with that expertise you mentioned would make enhancing audio. So really good point. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, George. Robert, we got some other news we want to get to. Are you able to stick around just a little bit in case some people want to come up and ask a few questions at the end?
It'd been my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Well, this is, you had so much to share. So I really enjoyed devoting a lot of time to this because we're so interested in knowing more about LinkedIn audio and how it works, and knowing that you're the one behind the town hall. Susan and I had found that to be fascinating. And, she suggested we reach out to you. I'm like, I'll do it, because she's not available today to be here with us. She's at a podcast event in London right now. But I'm so glad I reached out to you, and thank you for saying yes. You're amazing. And so if everybody sticks around, we can do a short little Q&A at the end. But we do have a few more things to go over. This is a weekly show where we talk about the latest social audio news for anyone that's new here. And Morgan, you have some information about Reddit talk. You want to tell us a little bit about that real quick?
Yes, another under-the-radar story from Reddit, which is that they have finally launched a host program. It launched 6 or 7 days ago. Nobody has written about it, so this is a sneak peek. The details of it is it's not like the other creator programs that we've seen, in that they don't have a creator fund, so they're not going to be paying creators. But in other ways, it's quite similar. So what they're asking is that hosts can do 4 talks every 30 days. They should be more than 30 minutes. You can buddy up with a co-host. And in return for that, they're going to give you special visibility. So Reddit now have the talk bar, which is their equivalent of the space bar. So you'll be featured in that. And apparently Reddit people really like this. You can compete to win a special badge for your profile. But it's basically a creator program light, and it runs for 3 months starting on June the 15th. There is one other detail about it, which I think to me is the most interesting and important detail, is that as part of this, Reddit are expanding who can host a talk. So until now, because they had concerns with moderation and quality issues, they have restricted the ability to host to only the moderators of subreddits and any member that they give approval to. But it looks like as of June, any user will be able to sign up and ask Reddit for the ability to host, which is a rather large expansion of who can host. And the other detail is you'll no longer be restricted to hosting in a subreddit. You'll be able to just go live on Reddit, and they're calling it hosting from your profile. But that is another big change. So it brings it much closer, potentially, to Twitter Spaces. And Reddit has a very large installed user base with significant daily active users. There's a question about whether this user base will take to this, but this is certainly, I think, Reddit's best shot at that. So at the moment, there are 40,000 subreddits that have Reddit Talk enabled. I don't have the user number to hand, but you can imagine it's fairly high. But as I say, this launch has been really quite low key. So if you search Twitter, I couldn't find anybody who had talked about it. Nobody on the Reddit team, the Reddit account. So this is it really does seem to be like another kind of quiet, soft launch that Reddit are doing. But if you are into Reddit, that is another place that you can now go and sign up for this program and get the ability to host and give it a whirl.
It sure sounds interesting for those that are really into using Reddit. I don't really use it much, so it's not for me. But, I like that these platforms are offering audio like this for their users. So it'd be interesting to see. So, keep us posted as this develops. Thank you for putting all this information together for us. Very interesting. And now we have some Clubhouse news. Who wants to talk about Clubhouse? Y'all are more the Clubhouse people than I am. I'm more about the spaces. So who wants to share? I understand is a product update that's brewing?
there's not that much to say about this, but I mean, if Michael wants to chip in as well with what he's heard. Okay, so some of this is behind the scenes, and it partly comes without identifying a source. There's one of the well-known people on Twitter who poke around in the code and try and find things. So there are some screenshots of new views and some text. So going on this, there are other details which are things that you can work out. So, for example, over the last couple of months, Clubhouse have done quite a major engineering hiring push. So the size of the iOS team has pretty much tripled in the last couple of months, and they are building. So we don't know exactly what it is, but from reading tea leaves, it sounds like, again, it's the thing that we touched on before. So it's a new section of Clubhouse that will be focusing on what they call social clubs. So it's a new type of club. And it looks like this club will reintroduce some of the old mechanics of Clubhouse. So these clubs look like they will be invitation only, and each member will get only a few invitations and will be able to invite other people to join, which is the experience that Clubhouse had at the level of the app back in 2020. But this time it's at the level of the club. So that's going to be quite interesting. But it seems like they're in a testing phase now. So Paul mentioned in the town hall that this is a beta test, which is a phrase that he doesn't use very often. So it's not the standard test where they roll it out to a random selection of users. This seems to be a bit more formal and targeted. So it looks like they're in the stage of getting feedback from a set of users at the moment, and we'll be iterating on that. But yes, that's all I can say. But it's I think this could be quite a big thing for them, and part of a new strategy.
Yeah, interesting for sure. Anybody else have anything to comment on that?
Well, one thing that I will say is that the Clubhouse, and I guess tandem with this, have been pivoting the user interface for Clubhouse in the app. We've seen over time that the graphical elements look different than they did a few months ago, and they're repositioning some things on the screen from the top to the bottom. They've moved what was called the sidebar, which was a place where you could see where all of your friends were on the app, even what rooms they were in just kind of one page. That's been moved to the main hallway, and you can now see if they're talking in a room, if they're listening in a room, tap on their profile, and then there's a couple of actions to choose to go into that room or wave them into a different room. And this has all seemed to be in anticipation of something else that's coming. And so it sounds like the social rooms are a big part of that. And I'm really curious to see kind of where this goes. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the way of thinking about this as well is that on Spaces, we can host rooms and put on talks and gather, but it's maybe a little harder to see exactly where your friends are online and to be able to go and hang out with them in a more informal room. There's also, of course, not private rooms yet, or semi-private rooms. So Clubhouse are looking quite closely at the relationship between friends and people who tend to start rooms together, and they're trying to work out, I think, the overlaps there where these conversations go quite well and who ends up joining them and how they evolve. So the wave bar is part of that because it shows you where your friends are and who's online and are they speaking or listening. But we lack this extra surface, I think, which is to easily see where they are and start small gatherings with them. So I would anticipate it would be something like that.
And also, I put in the nest that there is a new app icon for Clubhouse, passing the torch over to some other people. So I like how they're always doing that with real users. And there's an interesting article, I'm just going to put in the nest. We don't really have time to talk about it today, but an interesting article that Chris, the social audio guy, had posted a few days ago with Clubhouse talking about the Android signups have drastically decreased since a year ago. Just some interesting information in there I wanted to share. Next up, Morgan, you have some information about Spotify Live. Would you like to share that with everyone?
This was one of those slightly unexpected things to see on the timeline, but Spotify tweeted that they have started a Discord for podcasters, and it has maybe 200 members at the moment, and it's been in a quiet beta the last month or so by the looks of it. And this was supposed to be the public launch. I'm not sure what happened because they deleted the tweet an hour or two afterwards. So I managed to get in there, and I think Michael's in there too. And what it looks like is that Spotify's editorial team are running this Discord, and they're using it as a way to highlight and have conversations with podcasters who they want to spotlight on Spotify itself. And they're also doing various sessions. So I'm sure this will open back up again. I can't work out how to get an invite link for anybody, but it was an interesting thing for me as well, because these conversations with podcasters on Spotify, they're not doing them on Spotify Live. They're going to be doing them in this Discord server for now. So that was an interesting move. But again, the role that Discord is increasingly having. I mean, it certainly had this with the NFT community, but with the general creator class is interesting. So I think Spotify is moving out. I mean, one of the other things that we saw is that Spotify started a series for video podcasts on YouTube. So they've set up base over there as well and are producing there. So I don't know what to make of that, but there we go. There's Spotify.
Yeah, and actually on the Discord server, they posted last evening that they hope everybody's doing well, and the beta period for Spotify Podcast Discord has come to an end. So I think they're not accepting anyone else right now, but Morgan and I did manage to get in there, so I guess we'll see what happens, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting for sure. And then also Chris Messina had tweeted out, I put in the nest that Spotify is starting to promote Spotify Live events in the main app. So that's interesting. Have you guys seen that or noticed it?
No, so apparently Chris got a notification, and I think Chris is on some sort of advanced, he tends to see things before I do, but he got a notification on the main Spotify app about a live thing that he wasn't subscribed to, asking if he wanted to go along. So that's good. They're beginning to push out live notifications, which is a new thing for Spotify.
Very interesting. So this Rodecaster 2, there's last week when we were talking about it, you guys were talking about how this is so new. There's not a whole lot of information, but it seems like a lot more information is coming out. There was this article in The Verge that Matt Navarro shared. And then I'm also, the last tweet I'm going to put in the nest for today is Tom Buck. One of our listeners had DM'd me a few nights ago, and I just happened to be on Twitter, and he was saying, hey, there's this live stream going on right now talking about Rodecaster Pro II, and this guy got access, Tom Buck, and it was a fascinating live stream showing all these features. Did any of you guys get a chance to watch it? Because I watched a big chunk of it, and I don't even have one. I don't even have an old Rodecaster. I am a podcaster, but I just have a Zoom recorder. I don't have the fancy Rodecaster, but it's fascinating. What do you guys think of this?
Yeah, the Rodecaster Pro II has officially been announced by Rode. It will be officially released and shipped about the middle of June. They are taking pre-orders right now. The cost will be $699 USD. And it's really a much more versatile unit than the original was. The original was sort of one microphone locked to one fader. This one has a lot of internal routing capabilities and lots and lots of other features I won't get into. But it's pretty exciting, and they are really expanding beyond podcasting. The first unit was really meant for podcasters. They got a lot of feedback from live streamers and gamers and musicians especially, who said, we want XYZ features, and they have built all of that into this unit, especially from the start, and they're planning on expanding features every 4 to 6 weeks with firmware updates. The Rodecaster Pro II has a much faster processor in it for being able to do all of this audio routing and things like that. So it's kind of its own little powerful computer for any sort of audio production. And I'm really interested to see what all people are going to do with it. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like it's for people doing live audio like we're doing here in Spaces and doing on LinkedIn and Clubhouse. It seems like it's becoming attractive to not just podcasters. And I like that it's really coming up with all these features to appeal to a much wider group of people.
You know, I have to give Michael kudos, because I was listening to the Podland podcast and they credited him with getting the scoop on this and releasing it out into the wild. So kudos.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Big kudos to Michael, because you talked about it quite a bit last week, and it was so interesting. And now it seems like everybody's catching up to you, Michael, and we're hearing so much more about it. I see we have a speaker here, Ariel's. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. My name's Ariel. Yeah, I wanted to know, it's crazy when we think about it, but this social audio is still in its infancy. And one of the things that I find wonderful about it is that you get real-time feedback of what you're talking about with real people, that anytime you check, like if you have like a radio talk show host, you have to call in, you have to go through a screener, you have to go through all these steps. But over here, it's real time view. That's number one. And number two, I am hoping and praying that social audio apps do something where you could pick like distances and locales of who you want to look at your rooms, because it's so easy to be in an audio room with so many people and find like-minded people. Whereas you go to a mall or a grocery store, it's kind of weird. Like, you can't really open up a space. What are you going to do? Like, walk to random people? So I'm hoping that they really do something to get, people in your local area. So once you already know that you're like-minded with them and you have some kind of goal or vision in mind, you can collaborate, you can work together. And I mean, we all hope that one day the people that we're talking to online that we're so like-minded with can come see us in person. So I'm hoping that they make some kind of function where you can know who's in your local area and what topics they enjoy, and you can just get to know people that way. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Ariel. That's great. Really loved having you here with us. Did anybody have any questions for Robert with LinkedIn audio? He's been so patient staying here late with us.
Yeah, this is George. I'd like to know when are ordinary people like us going to be able to go over to LinkedIn and actually run an event?
And that is the $1 million question, George, to which I still do not have the answer.
Oh boy!
So I apologize. Two of your questions.
No, I thought I'd give it a shot. Maybe you had some. Okay, we're chomping at the bit. We'd love to try it. We have a lot to offer. Frankly, they're idiots if they shut us out.
Well, two points to that. One, if you were to ask me a prediction for when I think it will be rolled out.
All right, let's ask that. Yeah.
I would say, and people may say, well, that's just ridiculous. I would say by Q4 of this year, which I know in audio world, because we want everything yesterday and like a day is too late. But I think if you were to give me a safe prediction, I would say by Q4 of this year. And to re-stress to people, if anyone has enjoyed this conversation and wants to collaborate with LinkedIn Audio, I'm super keen to make that happen so people can get on the tools and experience it and talk to your communities over there.
That's great. Yeah, love that.
Sorry, Madeline. And it's not to, I just want to make an interesting observation. And again, just because I know everyone knows who he is and it's been VCon. So Gary V has only used LinkedIn Live audio once. I was actually his first ever guest speaker. I think it's my pinned tweet on my on my profile. And he only did a 15-minute LinkedIn Live audio with us. And Sweater, who's also there, my good friend, also spoke to Gary and gave some good advice. The reality is he has not returned to LinkedIn Live audio since. Now, I know he's busy. He's had a lot on, but I know he's been doing Twitter Spaces in the meantime. He's been in other places. He has a large following. So Gary did say he liked the look and feel of LinkedIn. He was a bit disappointed that there wasn't the recording feature because it's Gary and he wants to repurpose everything. But of course, he had his back team on it anyway. But it's just an interesting observation that I would have thought, because that was a few weeks back now that he tested that he would have at least done another pop-up room or done another 15, 20 minutes. So I think he's still waiting for a lot of these features for LinkedIn to roll out to really justify his time. And when he first launched the space with no notifications, he got about 500 people in the event, which, given how many, I think he's got 5-6 million followers or something on LinkedIn, I think he probably would be hoping for far greater reach once he sort of gets more discoverability and access to really utilize the platform. Just an observation. I wanted to mention that.
Well, I put your pinned tweet in the nest, and yeah, I mean, when I first saw that, when I first went to your Twitter account, I was like, whoa, how cool is that? But yeah, he likes his specific features. I'll never forget when Anchor was brand new, like I'm saying probably the first week of Anchor, he got all over it, playing with it, trying it out, and then he says, I'm not using this because it doesn't do the auto spell. Because, you know, he's like, I'm trying to type and I can't spell everything right, and needs to autocorrect. And it wouldn't autocorrect. And he's like, I'm not using it because it doesn't until it autocorrects, I'm not using it. So, hey, you know, sometimes we have some very specific features we want when we're going to do things. And yeah, he's all about repurposing content. So hopefully he'll come back to LinkedIn Audio once that's available. Robert, you've been amazing. You shared so much. For anybody that came late and missed Robert earlier talking all about LinkedIn Audio, mind's blown here. He shared so much. Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.